Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a brand new and beautiful day. It's Wednesday. It's time for Exploring Sacred. And the chat room is now open. Please join me. Come on in. And for those of you, wherever you happen to be around the globe, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's great to be with you. Good morning, Charlotte. Hi, Kimberly. Hey, Katie. As I said, the chat room is open, and I can tell you that those that gather in the chat room on Wednesday morning are exquisite souls, sensitives and seers, and amazing spiritual beings doing beautiful work here on Grandmother Earth. So come on in. Hey, Janet. How are you? And my friend Janet from across the pond is in the house. Good to have you here. All right. Well, this morning we are going to be talking about sensitives and seers and sensitives. And I was going to talk about this last week until I realized that last week was actually the Mystic's Heart time slot. So this week it's seers and sensitives, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Hihane washte chue. Good. I'm glad that you're doing well, Janet. Todd and I are planning our 10th anniversary trip to Scotland, bit by bit. And we've been watching Men in Kilts. We were just talking about you the other night, in fact, about that. We hope that we can meet up with you either in England or Scotland when we are over there for our 10th anniversary. Good morning, Peggy. Good to have you in the chat room. Following this show at 11 a.m. is Terry Rowell, and she will be talking about cults and conspiracies. So that ought to be a really great show from her amazing viewpoint as a psychotherapist and as a woman who's just, got a lot of good stuff going on. She's a pretty cool human being. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Seers and sensitives. What does it mean to be a seer? What does it mean to be a sensitive? Well, first of all, I have this fondness for angels. And angels, we know, come by many names. They're called shining ones. They are called light beings. There are so many names for what we just call angels and archangels. And well, they're messengers. They're beings of frequency, of light, of sound that I believe connect us to specific portions, parts of the intelligences of the heart and mind of all of creation. Some people call that God. And each one of these shining ones, these light being messengers from the vast regions of the galaxies in the heart and mind of all of creation, have a certain frequency that assists us in and on our human journey. And the archangel, the patron angel of seers, is the archangel Metatron. Metatron is also known in the Old Testament as the prophet Enoch. Now, that whole teaching about the prophet Enoch is interesting because Enoch is not necessarily a name. I know that there are people named Enoch, but the word Enoch itself means seer. It means prophet. It means somebody who is able to see and to perceive, not with physical sight, but with spiritual sight, what lies beyond the physical realm. Or maybe we could say the solid realms, the more solid realms, and into the subtle realms. In the Old Testament, this is my inner minister and my inner nerd coming through, researching these kind of things. In the Old Testament, we read that Enoch was walking with the Lord or the law, and then he was not. And when we ask the question and we dive into what happened to the seer, what happened to the prophet in that moment of walking in perfect balance, we come to understand that seers, prophets, call them what you will, ascend into their angelic self or into their higher self. their wisdom self. And in that moment, in that parable about Enoch, the seer, the prophet, who was walking in balance with the laws of the universe, he ascended, whoever Enoch was or is in the Old Testament, ascended into higher consciousness and was then known as, we call him now, Metatron. And of course, Metatron is very much associated with Metatron's cube, with the Kabbalah, however you choose to say that, and the Sephirot, right? The tree of wisdom, the tree of knowing. Some would say that a seer is born. Some people, such as myself, and many others like me, are born seeing. They're born with a third eye, the sixth sense. And that sixth sense is, of course, talking about the third eye, the ajna, the all-seeing eye, the sixth chakra. There are many terms for the ability to see. And other people have a spontaneous opening of the third eye, of clairvoyance, of seeing beyond. For some people, it may happen when they have a brain injury. I know people who have had brain injuries that after that injury, all of a sudden they can see into the subtle realms, the realms of spirit, the realms of octave, the realms of sound. Some people may have a spontaneous opening of the third eye in an illness. Having a very high fever may crack open the third eye. And other people will have a spontaneous opening when they are using hallucinogenics such as peyote, LSD, right? Ayahuasca. And in those cases, I've met many people that have had a third eye blast open due to using hallucinogenics. And because their brain was not ready for that opening of the third eye, right, they suffered long-term effects. And they continue to suffer long-term effects. But that's a whole other subject matter altogether. Seeing into the subtle realms is not necessarily done with the two physical eyeballs that we have in the front of our head. But for me, the ability to see is actually done through the use of my pineal gland, that wonderful little quartz crystal in my brain that informs the energy center, the wheel known as chakra number 6, that something is afoot, something is around, there's something to be seen. And when I see what it is that is to be seen, sometimes I see it on my inner screen. I call it my own little private movie theater in my mind. And other times I see what is to be seen outside of my physical body. There are times, like all the time, when I am constantly seeing what many others cannot see. And I see it outside of myself. It's not the little movie screen that's going quite often, but it is seeing outside of myself. So some people are just born to see. They're born seeing. Other people have a spontaneous opening of the third eye in a variety of manners. And other people have a snippet, right? They have a brief opening. It opens and it closes. And it may be something that we might equate to having a close encounter with spirit. Sometimes people will say to me, Denise, I never believed in any of this stuff until someone that I love passed, and I saw them. I saw them after their body was dead. I saw them. How did I do that? I haven't seen anything since then, and I never saw anything before then. But in that moment, I saw someone that I know for a fact is no longer alive in their physical body. Tell me how that happened. Sometimes for people who are grieving the loss of someone that they love who has gone home, The spontaneous opening of the third eye happens in that connection. It's that bond of love. It's that bond of love that doesn't cease to exist when someone we love loses their physical body or they shed their physical body. That bond of love does not go away. And it is in that bond of love, I always envision it something like a ribbon, a beautiful flowing ribbon of energy. That stays intact. And it's that ribbon of energy that carries frequencies to and from, just like with angels, beings of light visiting to and from other realms, that allows for a spontaneous or a brief interaction where others can see, have glimpses into spirit. Some people will say to me that when they are chanting, when they are praying, meditating, when they're in deep states of sacred, they have glimpses, they have moments of being able to see into the non-physical, the subtle realms. And for some people, the ability to see, it doesn't happen in this lifetime, and that is not something that determines whether somebody is more spiritual or any of that. It has nothing to do with any of that. Everybody has gifts and talents. Everybody has gifts and talents. And some of those gifts and talents may be the ability to see. Some of those gifts and talents may be what we call being a sensitive. A sensitive. Somebody who feels, somebody who knows, somebody who, by virtue of the word, senses what other people cannot sense. You can feel it. You know it. Can't always explain it, but you know that it is there. And this, by the way, is not a New Age thing. So it just kind of like grinds my whatevers, gets my knickers in a knot when people say, oh, that's all New Age stuff. No, it is not New Age stuff. What I'm talking about is very old age, ancient, has always been and will always be stuff. This is not New Age, strap a crystal to your third eye stuff, right? And I'm not dogging the New Age, but we're talking about ancient mysticism. Ancient. Good morning, Jan Francisco. Katie Battle is asking, after your stroke, did your third eye get stronger? It did. That left brain stroke said, you know what, we're going to take it up a notch. And I believe that that's why it happened, quite frankly. I think everything happens for a reason. I believe that. Even if it seems indescribably harsh, there's a reason. We may not always know in that moment, but hindsight and clear sight being what it is. I mean, even the psychiatrist that came to visit me in the hospital room, it's a wonderful psychiatrist. Usually after you have a stroke, you visit with a psychiatrist and all kinds of therapists. And, Dr. Gribben came to see me from the Christian hospital. And even she knew, she walked into the room, Katie, and she looked at me and she said, Denise, I know who you are. I have your books. At that time I had one book published. I know exactly who you are. And this has nothing to do with anything other than your spiritual path, does it? And I looked at the good doctor and I said, well, yeah, you're right about that, doctor. It has everything to do with my spiritual path. And while, there are certain physical things in my body that will never be the same, on the other side of that scale was that my third eye became more awake. My sensitivities really awakened. And that's the gift. And, when we're talking about this particular subject matter, many years ago, I was visiting my family out on the reservation, and one of the medicine people and I got to talking about this whole idea of stroke. And he told me that it's not uncommon for people, spiritual people, whether we call them shamans or holy people or medicine people, call them what you will, to have left brain strokes, because it is a way of further opening the sensitive seer's abilities. So, great question, Katie. Great question. So this is not a new age thing, despite what a lot of people have been led to believe, only because they don't know. This is an old age thing that, quite frankly, had to go underground with a whole lot of other amazing teachings from around the world. Seers and sensitives are not relegated to Roman Catholic saints. They're not relegated to Mongolian shamans, right? Or amazing medicine people in the Amazon jungle, or here in the United States, or seers of the Scandinavian sort. No. The ability to see and to be a sensitive is something that happened at the very creation, I believe, of a human body coming to earth for a human experience. And I believe that probably a long, long time ago, when we weren't so plugged into electronics and media and networks and all of this sort of a thing, I think people were more naturally, back in the day, attuned to being a seer and a sensitive. I subscribe to the Farmer's Almanac. I love it. And when I read the Farmer's Almanac, when I get it, it is like reading a really great metaphysical book. And it always reminds me that farmers, people that work the land, that work with animals, have always had some sensitivities and understandings of our relationship to every living thing. Just in that understanding that we are all synchronized, or we should be synchronized and harmonious to the changing of the seasons and to one another, that in itself lends to being a better seer or sensitive, to have better discernment. And by the way, the archangel of discernment and clarity, one of the most profoundly helpful archangels of discernment, is the archangel Saint Uriel, the regent of the sun, as he is called, when we need discernment in what we see. Being a seer and a sensitive does not mean that we only ever see really pleasant things. It's not like, for myself, for instance, that I spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, bearing witness to Shambhala, right, on the other side of the veil. No, that's certainly not what that means. There are moments of having those glimpses of divine places, of exquisite places. But it also means that we see things that are not pleasant. We're presented with things. We're led to things. Things are led to us. Things are led to us. If you are naturally a seer or a sensitive, in your light that you shine, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. In that shining light, call it your chakras, your auras, many names for this light that we emanate. There is a frequency that informs the non-physical world that you can see, that you can hear, that you can feel, that you can taste, that you can smell, that you know. There's a frequency in our light, and sometimes it is associated with a horoscopical sign, not always. I'm a quadruple Scorpio, so it would make common sense to those that study astrology that I would be a sensitive seer. But that isn't always the case. You don't have to be a Scorpio, you don't have to be a Cancer, but what I'm saying is that can add to it. I also believe that most sensitive seers are very old souls that are prepared and somewhat, equipped for what it is that we see and we hear and that we draw to us. What we draw to us. We're kind of like little beacons, all of us. For the seer and the sensitive, I think it makes me think about my first conversation with Sister Irene Mary McDonald, who I adore. I talk about her quite often, who now lives in Rapid City. And the next time I go out to Rapid City, I would like to make a visit. I don't know if she's living in a convent out there or in a private home, but I would like to go and visit Sister Irene when I'm visiting my sisters and my nieces and nephews and grandchildren out there. But she and I have had many conversations over our friendship about why it is in the past that seers and sensitives, and I suppose in some places today, have been persecuted. Why they've been persecuted, and why some people still to this day fear telling somebody that when they dream, it's often precognitive. They're dreaming of things that are going to pass, that are somewhere in the time continuum, that are coming into physicality, or that they see people who have passed on, or that they see beings that will never have a physical body. Why is that? Why is that? Well, and I had the same conversation with my spiritual director, Charmaine. Why have the mystics been persecuted? Well, because they have privy to knowledge that not everyone has. And that's a threat. And not every sensitive seer or mystic uses their talents for good. There are a lot of hornswogglers, right? Crackpots, call them what you will, charlatans, that pretend or say they have these gifts that actually end up doing more harm than good. And there are those that are gifted that use their gifts to purposefully harm, manipulate, damage others. And so a combination of all of that led to persecution of. And there's always that overlighting word called fear. What do they know that I don't know, and how come they can see what I can't see? What are they going to do with it? And since I don't understand it, I'm going to fear it. In this Aquarian age, in the time of the return of the ancestors and the ancestral ways all around Grandmother Earth, the mystics, the seers, the sensitives are resurfacing. I think I resurfaced quite a long time ago, 58 years ago. I resurfaced. And I think that I resurfaced at this time for a purpose, to help other people realize that their gifts, their talents are not the work of the devil, right? That they are gifts. It can be a double-edged sword of a gift to be a sensitive or a seer. That I will grant you. We do have to keep ourselves in check with integrity. Yeah. Babies sense you. Watch the reaction of the babies when you meet them. Yesterday was a great example. The baby got so excited upon meeting me. Yeah, they know that you know, Del. They know that you know. And babies, right, they still remember where they came from. And when they meet an adult human or a human of any age here on the earth plane that they know still knows and remembers, boy, there's a recognition. There's a wonderful recognition. The man-made ideas about what's a gift and what's a sin, what's a gift and what's an abomination, what is a gift of the Spirit and what is the doing of the devil is changing. Finally. Not in all corridors, and it's not something swift, obviously, but it is changing. It has been changing. I'm working on my latest manuscript called Soul Minding. Yesterday I was writing the chapter about the afterlife and the unwell dead, right? There's a good subject matter for any sensitive seer, right? The afterlife and the unwell dead. Writing about that and thinking as I was writing these chapters that it is astonishing to me in my years how much more open people are. And a lot of that has to do with what is now available on television or YouTube to see. There are still those that are going to cling on to the fact that anything outside of what is dogma is, the work of Beelzebub and Beelzebub's minions. But that's really old school. That's really old man-made. And it's not to say that we don't have to keep ourselves in check as sensitives and seers. We do. How are we walking that red road? Are we walking the red road? What are we doing? How are we helping? How are we serving? And it's not to say that a sensitive and seer does not have troubles in their lives. Because we all, guess what, came here to have a human life. And that means that we get to have very human experiences and interactions. That's why we came here. So while we're having a human life, we also, as seers and sensitives, remember that there's way more going on. Far more going on than what we are seeing in the physical world at any given time. And for some of us, we can see it simultaneously. It's exhausting, but we can see it simultaneously. There are things that the sensitive seer sees and experiences that others quite simply would never, ever believe unless they saw it with their own eyes. Todd will say that to me sometimes. Yes, Del Marie is a wonderful person. Katie, you are so right about that. Del Marie is a wonderful, wonderful soul. Sometimes Todd will say, you know what, Dana, if I did not see that with my own two eyeballs, if I did not just hear that with my own ears, I would not have believed what I just experienced. Now, my kids grew up with me, and they have their own talents going on. Sometimes what I see shocks me, surprises me. I have had some shocking things that I only thought ever happened in the movies happen to me. And for those of you that are listening as a sensitive or a seer, and you're tuning in to find out whether I believe that everything on the other side is just golden gravy, I don't believe that. On the other side, in this non-physical playground of life, not everything is pleasant. And, I remember Charmaine, my spiritual director, saying to me, I would never want to be you because for the rest of your life, the darkness is going to nip at your heels. It's going to test you. Integrity testing. The darkness is going to test you. And she was right about that. It comes in the form of gossip, right? Boy, there's an integrity tester, gossip. Standing up for what you believe in. Geez, yesterday or the day before, I don't know if it's because the Scorpio aspect of the new moon got to me the other day, but I called somebody out on Facebook for a racist meme they had on their Facebook page. It was so blatantly racist. Todd's like, holy smokes, that one got ya. I said, yeah, and I called it out. Finally, he took it down yesterday, that awful, ugly meme. And Todd said to me, what was it that bothered you the most about that racist meme, other than the fact that it was racist? I said, because it was posted by somebody who was pretending or portrays himself to be a holy person, a spiritual person. That's why. That's why. It's people like that that give the rest of us sensitives and seers a bad name. And so I called him out on it. Yeah, it was a public way to do it. You all know what I'm talking about. Living the human life and balancing the spiritual life, having a public spiritual life does not mean that you get to wield it in whatever manner you feel. Integrity. 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 Hey, Carla Joe. My mind wanders when I start talking about those things. Being a sensitive and a seer is not some special thing that elevates anyone above being a decent human being. It doesn't. And I think more than any time right now, we all need to be a decent human being. And especially if you're going to tout yourself as a sensitive, as a seer, as a spiritual teacher, it's really important to be a good human being. I had this discussion last night with Dane. My son Dane called, and he goes, Ma, you have a tone in your voice. And I said, yeah, I was just dealing with this on social media. And I said, you know what, son? The bottom line is, at the end of our lifetime, one of the things about being a sensitive and a seer is that I talk to dead people. And Dane goes, yeah, Mom, we all know you talk to dead people. And I said, well, here's the thing, son. At the end of our human lifetime, we get to review all the ugly. We get to review the times that we made a racist remark. We get to review the times that we were cruel, that we said something hateful and mean. We get to review all of that. And not only do we get to review all of that, we get to feel it from the other person's perspective or the animal's perspective. We get to feel that, what our actions did. None of us escapes that. And you can either clean your act up now and be mindful, say sorry when you need to say sorry, or not. And you get to review it at the end of your life. And and by the way, in my 58 years of talking to dead people, none of them has ever said, I'm so happy I was such a racist. I'm so happy that I judged other people by the color, the tone, the octave of their skin and their eyes. I'm so happy that I did that. That enriched my life. those are the people that I tend to have to help continue to move along because they're bound to the earth by their actions, unable to forgive themselves, or worse. He's like, geez, Mom, you're really... I said, yeah, because it's the truth. There's no dude at the pearly gates waiting to log us into the heavenly realms. There's us reviewing us. And we probably have some shining ones there and ancestors that are going to help us process the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what we learned, what we gleaned from all of it. That's the process. So be awake and aware, Dane. Yeah, Mom, I know you've been telling me that for 30 years now. Well, yeah, be awake and be aware. That's the responsibility also of being a sensitive and a seer. It's also the reality that when I have to deal with earthbound spirits, people who haven't crossed all the way over, I get to hear about what it is that's binding them to the earth plane. Some atrocity, a trauma. They can't forgive themselves. They haven't picked up their stones. Can't move along because they left loose ends. They're still bound by hatred for people of a certain skin color, of a certain religious ideology. Whew. Being a sensitive and a seer is not for the faint of heart. It's not. And most of us choose not to live in convents or monasteries anymore, or at the top of lonely mountains. So we can either work through that stuff while we're here so we don't drag it all over to the other side, or, you see what I'm saying. Do you have space now to comment on people who are born seers but squashed by parents who demanded only their old belief system? And then the process of coming out and openly living their seerness once they are an adult. I love that question, Charlotte. Yeah, we can talk about that. There are a lot of people who are squashed by religion, by dogma, by culture. There are people who are squashed by what only special people see. Only priests, ministers, medicine people, shamans, they're the only ones who see. So that means you must be schizophrenic because you don't have a position of power, or in our belief system, only the church prophet sees, right? Everybody else is mentally ill or they have a great imagination. One of the things that I've learned, Charlotte, in my years is in educating myself that all pathways, spiritual and religious pathways, have seers, have sensitives. The old mystics, the Christian mystics, the Jewish mystics, the mystics of the Abrahamic religions have always been. There's a time when we had to go underground in spiritual paths and religious paths. That time is over. For religious people that are fearful of the word seer or mystic, helping them to understand about the Christian mystics is helpful. They may not always understand. They may not always understand. There may be those of your loved ones who will love you because they love you, but they will never understand you. And you have to be okay with that. I'm certain that I have relatives that love me because they love me, but they don't understand. And maybe they're even a little fearful of my ability to see spirit. Coming out as an adult with your seerness, I love that new word, is going to rattle the cages of others and challenge the balance of others. For a couple of reasons. You can see what they can't. They may perceive you as thinking you're holier than them now or closer to God than they are because you can see. Denying your seerness also has consequences. You chose to come into this lifetime to be a seer. And maybe everything happened up until this point just as it should be, so that as an adult in your seerness, your reawakening may help to reawaken others who are afraid to say, well, you know what, Charlotte, now that you're talking about it, I see too. And so does your niece, and so does your nephew. Your grandchild sees. How come nobody wants to talk about this? Why doesn't anybody want to talk about this? Well, because it's scary. We have understandings of things that other people don't. But then there are people who are brilliant musicians who understand music in a way I never will, or artists that understand creating art that I never will. There are so many gifts, as Hafiz says. I love Hafiz. We have so many gifts still unopened from our birthday. So many gifts that remain unopened from our birthday. And maybe we're not supposed to open them on our first, second, third, fourth, but maybe our 40th or 50th or 60th birthday. It's never too late to open up that birthday gift that you came with. Whatever sect of Christianity that we are raised in, if we are raised Christian, understanding and researching the mystics, the prophets, really does help other people, I believe. Even in Catholicism, I was amazed at how many people pray to the saints for intervention or intercession and didn't realize that in doing so, what they were doing is very mystical, and that the saints that they're asking assistance from most often were church mystics. Oh, right? They scratch their head. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, no, because you're so immersed in it, you probably never equated the two. It's just always been. It's just always been. Hey, Kelly Spencer. What I would say is, it's your birthday gift to open, Charlotte. It's time to open it. And there will be those that want to share in that gift. Some will be jealous of the gift that you opened, right? Some will wish that they had it too. Open it anyway. A long time ago, somebody taught me that the things that we hide within ourselves are the things that people love us for anyway, because we may not be open about it, but people can sense it about us. Some people will say, well, we wondered, Charlotte, when you were finally going to admit that you were a seer. We've known all along. What have you been waiting for? It makes some people a little nervous, but those of us who love you, we've known all along. Yeah. Kelly. Well, Kelly, yeah, I talked a little second about, my little social media interaction yesterday that you were aware of. Anyway. Sensitive and a seer, we've always been. We will always be. It makes some people nervous until you have just a plain old discussion about it without making it seem scary or woo-woo or, right? What is it? Who are they? Well, where did they go? We had them, St. Teresa of Avila, she was around. Was she the last of that kind, like a dinosaur, right? Was St. Teresa the last one? Well, no, because then there was Padre Pio. And what about good old St. Francis? What about St. Catherine of Siena? No, they didn't die out like dinosaurs. There wasn't a meteor that came and schmucked out all of the Christian mystics. But they did have to go underground, thanks to what was going on in Europe, in Scotland and England and France. Now, Scotland has released a long list of the names of witches, aka healers, seers, sensitives, that were murdered during the time of those trials, the time when the seers and the sensitives, the gifted of spirit, were murdered, right? We just celebrated, yesterday, the anniversary of the last of the witch trials in Salem, Massachusetts, here in the United States. Lately, I've learned a whole lot about King James and what went on in Stirling Castle there in Scotland. So yeah, everybody had to duck for a half a minute. And all of the seers and the sensitives around the world, it's like when Dorothy landed in Oz, and that song, Come Out, Wherever You Are, right? And the munchkins pop up out of the, come out, wherever you are, sensitives, seers, healers, wise ones, old ones, knowers, sensitives, modern day mystics, shamans, medicine people, holy people, story keepers, wisdom keepers. Come out wherever you are. It's the time of the eighth fire. It's the time of the eighth fire. The return of the sensitives and the seers to their place in society in a good way. In a good way. In a human way, but in a good way. The modern churches feel there is no more need for mystics or prophets, as God has said everything he has to say. Yeah. Boy, that's rapidly changing. There are very few butts in the pews anymore, as they say. Very few butts in the pews. I mean, I go to the pew still. A good midnight mass. Yeah. Vespers. I still like Christmas Eve Mass, a good one. If I can find myself at a Latin Mass, Of course I find myself inside my NEP, my sweat lodge, sitting with spirit. It's what we make of it. One of my best questions I think I ever asked another human being is I asked Wichasha Wakan, a holy man out on the reservation. I said, what is the Lakota way? And he laughed at me and he said, there is no Lakota way. The way is between you and Creator. That's the way. And the way that you have time with Creator is yours. That's between you and the Creator. Ooh, I've carried that one with me. Yeah. So as we wrap up and we get ready for cults and conspiracies with Terry Rowell, my dear friend, everybody shine your light. If you have unopened gifts from your birthday, your Earth Day, open them with great joy. Open them. Enjoy them. Enjoy this human life. Enjoy your spiritual life. Walk in a good way, a joyful way. Shine. Come out from wherever you are. Blessings be, everybody. Have a gorgeous day.